All right, so now let's talk about the best way to raise our mason bees. You can do it really a whole bunch of different ways. You can get a nice house just like this and put a tray insert inside where the mason bees will literally pick their hole. That's going to be their house for the whole season, and they'll lay their eggs all the way from the back all the way to the front and seal it off with a little bit of mud. Super easy way to do it. You can also take something simple like a PVC tube or like a 2-liter bottle and stuff it with reeds inside. These are natural reeds. So what I mean by that is at the end of the season, you actually just peel them apart and pop out the cocoons that the mason bee would have laid inside there. Or you can get these handy dandy cardboard tubes that have a paper insert that just slides straight out here, and you can harvest them that way. You just sort of unpeel it just like that. Super easy to do. All right, so we have our house, our tubes, our place that our mason bees are going to call home. What do we really need in our backyard to be successful? Well, it's really simple. You want to have a whole bunch of pollen. So that could mean different flowers, it could mean different vegetables all producing pollen, but you also need a bunch of nectar. So you want flowers that are producing something for the mason bees to eat and to deliver to their offspring. You also need a good mud source. So what does that mean? Well, you know, hopefully you have some sort of muddy puddle nearby, or you dig a small hole and sort of fill it with a little bit of water. You can get some potting clay and keep it moist. And the mason bee will go along and they'll actually mine a little bit of that mud and again use that mud inside of the reed to separate out of the chambers. So if you have those three things, pollen, nectar, and a good mud source, you'll be really successful as a mason bee farmer. Generally, I like to have my houses or my tubes or whatever mounted about 4 feet at least off the ground, facing the morning sun. You know, generally I like to keep it a little bit out of the wind and the water if possible, kind of keep them a little bit more happy, and you know, try and keep it away from any sort of animals that may try and scratch at it or try and get to it at all, maybe some ants, that sort of thing. But in general, mason bees are super quiet. Your neighbors would never know that they're in your backyard, and generally a lot of times you'll never even know if they're really active because they don't really make the same sort of sound that a honeybee does. So if you provide those sources of food, which is pollen, nectar, and then the substrate, which is the mud, something that they can make their homes with, you'll do really, really well. Again, our mason bees in Tennessee, you want to put out, in general, it's about, you know, the end of March or the beginning of April, and mason bees are pretty much done June 1st. So their lifespan is about 8 weeks or so, maybe a little bit longer depending on the year. And then you'll actually sit on your house, so you just really won't do anything. Let them do their molting or their cocoon spinning, generally until about October or so, and then you'll harvest the cocoons in October. You'll store them in humidibees, that's what this is called, little tubs that keep them moist. You'll store them in the fridge, believe it or not. And then the following season, when it becomes time for the flowers to be blooming and you need your crops pollinated or your backyard gardens pollinated, you'll literally pull this out, and these mason bees will hatch out and they'll go directly to go pollinate your crops at the right exact time. It's pretty darn cool. Mason bees also will fly when it's, you know, maybe a little bit rainy or it's a little bit cooler, like in the 40s, which my honeybees would not fly that cold, or when it's, you know, kind of overcast or you know, inclement weather. So mason bees can be super, super helpful in early spring crops. If you want to grow anything in your backyard, like a strawberry, that generally blooms before really, you know, springtime really takes hold, a mason bee is going to be your best pollinator. It's what you need. So as long as you provide those different sources, you'll be really successful in your mason bee propagation or your mason bee farming. You should know that mason bees really only fly about 300 feet. So in general, these mason bees in your backyard, they're not going to venture too far away. Well, what does that mean? It means that all they're going to do is constantly pollinate that one area over and over again. So your backyard garden, get ready, because you'll have a whole lot of produce that's going to come out of it if you do this right. All right, so we've gone over how you be a successful farmer. Well, there's one step we still need to talk about. How do you harvest the mason bee cocoons? Well, it's really cool, so stay tuned.